I've watched you evolve over the past year, but I didn't realize you evolved like this far. Sure, it makes Dad's heart so warm.
Life is the C between B and D. B being birth, D being death. C is choices. Choices is what leads from the start of your life to the end of your life. That whole part is your life, and it's all the choices you make.
It's really hard to exist if you don't know who you are and what your value is.
People don't know who they are because everyone else is telling them who they should be.
The best way I can describe it is, if it's not going to matter in 5 years, why give it more than 5 minutes? If I look back, there were a lot of things I probably gave too much time to that didn't matter in 5 years. When I look back on my life, I'm going to look back mainly through social media. So I just pivoted my social media to things I want to share. And then putting this out there under a brand, it was very, very uncomfortable. But I think generally sacrifice is deemed as a negative. Imagine I use the word benefit. Most people would use the word sacrificing my time. Imagine using the word I'm benefiting my life.
This isn't an ordinary father and son conversation. In this video, we unpack some of life's lessons and how we overcome it. People aren't aware of their choices and their attitude, and I'll put them into the same category and separate them. Choices and attitude together makes up the entirety of your day, and then your day makes up the entirety of your week. Your week makes the entirety of the month, so on, your years, your future. So I think when people choose, or they go out, or they do something that's not necessarily good for them, that's a choice. If you want to do something good for yourself, you should choose it, but people will make the excuse of, I'll do it tomorrow, or I don't feel like doing it today, or there's always another time. You choosing to not make the better choice, you choosing to make the bad choice, and that's going to affect your attitude as well, because the next day you feel upset about it because, I didn't do it yesterday, now I've got to do it today. Your attitude shifts with your choice, Then I separated attitude. Now I wake up every morning. Yes, I don't feel too great to wake up at the time I do to go gym, and it's early and people do it constantly, but it's your attitude that sets it. Now linking to choice again is I chose to make that time to get up. Why would I complain about it? So my attitude has to be shifting as I get to wake up at this time. I get to continue doing what I need to do and continue with my day. So I think attitude really sets the tone of the entirety of your day. The choices go further on. I like the saying of life is the C between B and D. B being birth, D being death. C is choices. Choices is what leads from the start of your life to the end of your life. That whole part is your life, and it's all the choices you make. There's consequences to it, who you surround yourself with. Their choices can affect you. Your choices can affect them. Same as attitude. If someone else's attitude is bringing the whole mood down, why should I let that affect my attitude? I'm going to choose to let them have that power over me when I shouldn't. The power's within me. I can rise above and keep my attitude high and not let them bother my mood.
So Dad's mind blown. I really didn't realize you went so deep and so far, and how much. I've watched you evolve over the past year. You had a gap year from varsity, but I didn't realize you evolved like this far. It makes Dad's heart so warm to see. And it's not that it has to be perfect. We're all gonna have phases of relapse where life gets hard or life gets busy. But I think it's that constant choice of coming back on. And I think you've also experienced it a few times of trying to do something and not getting there and beating yourself up about it, and then trying again and always seeing it as a failure, and be careful of the way you talk to yourself. And yeah, I've just seen an incredible transformation in you, especially in the past 4 or 5 months.
It comes with a lot of lessons though, and that is what life is. Experiences and hardships can be lessons. It's whether you learn from them or you don't.
You watched Dad build the course and put it all together. You came with a friend to the first one. I remember you must have been 18, 19, somewhere there. Saw Dad on stage delivering it. Dad was nervous. I'd given the course a few times, but to have my son in the audience, it's very different, because you stand there and you wonder, everything you do and what you're telling people and in coaching, that person is directly related and watches you every day. So there's a form of pressure you feel, or I felt, when giving it, wondering in the back of my head, is what I'm teaching always what I live? So I felt a lot of pressure when I actually gave that course with you and your friend there in the audience.
I think it was quite great to see. I think I can understand the pressure from my point of view. I think I felt a really large sense of pride. Like, I know I was super excited. I took photos of you, posted on my social medias because I couldn't believe it myself. But I think it was awesome. The period of my life at that stage, I don't think I fully grasped the concept. But with my friend, it was, you could see they were a lot eager. It also pushed me because they were taking something. I mean, I saw you work on it. I never understood it. I went for the sake of going. But I think the more I grew up and the more I did the course again and again, I learned new things every time I redo it. So it definitely did change from the first time, but that first time was a different sense. I looked at it completely differently. I looked at it as, I'm proud of you and what you were doing, but I also didn't really focus on the course and what it was doing for me. It was more of seeing what it did for you.
So you're saying the first time you came to the course, it wasn't to learn, it was more just out of interest. How many times have you done the course since?
I took that first one, then I did a recording for your second one in the theatre, and then I did online and read through the book. Definitely the ones that stood out was doing it online and constantly going through the book. The book was just not the same as seeing someone speak about things. It's self-teaching, but the course online was really brilliant. I mean, to be able to go back on a section that you may not fully grasp, or having to take notes and do the exercises, just taking your own pace with it is really helpful. And I think I took a lot more in digitally compared to in person, where I think it's got to be spread out a bit more. But I learned something new every time I've gone to the course, the same one, a new aspect of my life, a new challenge. It helps me thoroughly through it.
Nice, boy. Dad's going to give you some freedom here. What is it that you want to talk about that if you had to leave somebody with, or a few things that you leave somebody with? I know there's a lot of people your age, they watch, they follow, they're trying to navigate their way through life. What are some of the realizations you've had, especially doing the course now quite extensively?
I think there's a few topics, but the most important one to me, and I think I'm very guilty of, and a lot of people guilty of, is filling your cup. People at my age are trying to grasp a different perspective of life. I mean, you're going through so much change, so much has happened and is still going to happen. And a lot of people are just willing to kind of give themselves their energy, their time, because that's what you're kind of taught to do. You go to the social event and it's spread your energy, it's a cool time. But you get back home and you feel drained, you feel tired, you feel like you don't necessarily want to see people, you want your own time. But then people don't use that time to focus on themselves. They either go again or they use something else that doesn't add value to their lives. So I think with filling your cup, like in the analogy that you say, in the airplanes we taught with the masks for oxygen that you should do it yourself before helping a child out, someone else, because what good are you if you've passed out from limited oxygen? So how can you give so much energy to people if you're not giving energy to yourself and being recharged constantly? Otherwise, it's just going to be take from other people and you are just giving. But when are you going to give that towards yourself and fill your energy levels and recharge? And to me, I find it as respect your relationship with yourself as well. Focus on you, then you have enough to go and give to other people.
How did you process through that? Where did you come to that awakening? How? And then what fills your cup now?
I think a lot of it is all the past experiences. I think I've always been a giver without receiving, and not in a way of I expected. But I think I gave myself so little, and I'd give what I should give myself to other people. Where I felt drained, I'd have my dips of feeling sad or feeling down and not doing anything to add to myself. Now it's habits such as gymming, going for a walk, letting go of the habits that don't serve me, such as, substances like nicotine or drinking, where those limit your choices, they change your attitude. So I think I've just recharged myself on focusing on things that truly make me feel at peace, and things I think make me feel at peace because that's what my age group or society points, that's what you should do.
And things like alcohol, I mean, we drink, we party, we both do, but it's a lot more controlled and enjoyable when you look forward to it.
Of course. I mean, I've realized I've had a lot of my life to go and be that reckless behavior of drinking and partying and jolling, but there's so much more to life than that. I mean, not the analogy, but your topic of happiness. A lot of people do generally confuse happiness, fun, boredom. Happiness is that your family's in good health, you have a roof over your head, you have food on the table, and it's something I struggled with. You'd think it's all about the social part. Like you say, when you go out, people always ask, are you happy? But it should be, are you having fun? Because you can have fun and not be happy, but you confuse the two. So I do think people need to focus on what their true happiness is and separate it from the category of fun. Because fun for me is a moment. Happiness should be consistently through your life.
Nice, boy. It's a really nice way of putting it. This morning before we sat doing this, we were speaking last night and you wanted to go over the topics and see what we talk about. And we actually didn't get time. And this morning you and I had a nice catch up. And I think we actually spoke for about an hour and a half. And it was just heart to heart. Those moments, being able to share things you're interested in, what you're learning, what you're growing, what you're developing, that makes Dad's heart very warm. Yes, we have fun. We might go on a Joel together, we watch a football game, we do other fun things, but that was really special to sit and really go through how you changing, how you growing, and actually being able to share that with me versus being afraid or what, the typical parent-son kids relationship. It's been really amazing going through that we can share almost everything.
I think it also comes from we've been through our challenges and obstacles, but we've overcome them. And there's a lot of things that make us who we are today and how we connect. There's experiences and lessons we both had to learn that added up to these moments. But in general, as well, what I think of the whole parents with their kids and things, and I think it goes, the whole social dynamic is in a world where we seek communication, everyone avoids it. You're so scared to say something because you're worried how the other would react. Or, for example, on text, you time your messages or you leave this person undelivered, which you taught me is just read it, say you can't get back. And it's just communicating, and it solves so many different situations between people, and it would better relationships, or at least it's not about making sure you communicate well, it's making sure you don't miscommunicate, And I think a lot of people do that without thinking. It's become a habit now and the normal society norm. And I feel like people can't speak to one another truly unless it's in a closed room, one-on-one, and it's because something's wrong. It can never just be out of, hey, I don't want to tell you this. It's either that or it's quietness.
Yeah, I've also seen quite a weird social dynamic, especially with social media escalating attention spans. People don't give each other real time anymore. It almost feels transactional, next. Not being always present, which I think everybody's struggling with being present at the moment.
I see you now being quite active on social media and posting things I don't think normal people usually post, or I think parents post either. So I want to know, the purpose of it for yourself or out there, your social media base, your social media presence, and who you are as a person, how have you found that journey?
Sure, it took Dad a lot of insecurity to get through a lot of insecurity to start this as a most effective thing. Our first ever podcast, Kieran brought it up and how I struggle with it. It's one of the reasons I created under most effective, even though people say to use a personal brand, and Dad keeps his personal Instagram profile for family and friends and people close to him. But also in sharing it, I'll break it down into two pieces. Dad looks at it as, when I look back on my life, I'm going to look back mainly through social media. I think we're in a time where you're going to catalog your life. And I realized I didn't want to look back on my life of highlights and things I didn't want to see. That was fake or a blur. So I really pivoted my social media to highlights that I wanted to see. I don't want to see a million selfies of myself. So if I do post a photo of me in the gym or doing something, it's something I want to remember when I'm older. It's something when my son or my friends look at it, that's what I stood for, that's what I resonated for. It really helps me a lot because you can get lost in the validation. So I just pivoted my social media to things I want to share. So sometimes it was a personal quote, it was a life lesson, and that was only stuck with family and friends. And then putting this out there under a brand, it was very, very uncomfortable. It still is very uncomfortable, but the more I do it, the better it becomes, and people reach out and they actually express that it does help. And then even in starting most effective, Dad learns a lot. You could probably say that's my addiction. I love learning and then learning how to use it instead of just constantly learning. When I walked out the gym the other day, I thought I need to break this barrier of how I feel, how I look, being self-conscious. And I put out my first post in the gym around how people should learn the repetition of things. And in the journey of learning, I realized all the people I learned from, I wanted to learn from. So I had to get through that mindset of the people that are going to use the course, that are going to follow most effective and use that, are the people that are looking for me. So instead of trying to please everybody in the world, in the tools that I've learned, in the coaching, the mentoring from hundreds of people that I've received, and vice versa, I always looked for that. So I had to get through this really strong mindset and push myself to realize that it is not for everybody. And if I change 1, 10, 20 people's lives, it's good enough. So that the most effective, although it's a course and a framework, all the social media aspect side of it, the stuff that I start putting out, I'm looking for people that are looking for me, that are looking to improve in the way that resonates with me. If they don't, and they find somebody else that's better, that resonates with them, that's the goal. So it's trying to be authentic. I've heavily documented my core values and double check against it when I put something out to try and help people. And another thing, they say, if you really want to get to know something, teach. So when Dad puts it out there, I still teach myself. I have to go through it. I have to understand it. And then I get to try and condense it and distill it and then put it out in a post. There are so many moments where you question yourself, you have self-doubt, but you've got to push yourself through it because there is value to be given. The story could be important. And this is just, I know you're also looking at doing a podcast or bringing something forward in the modern day world. It's not, even if you can try 10 different things that you're interested in. It's not failing. You're just looking for that one thing to work. And Dad realized that with this most effective, if it lands up being 100 of us that do this, or 10,000 or 100,000, whatever the number becomes, it's people that are a community. We're going to move forward. We're going to learn together. Look at some of the comments we get through, and a lot of people send private messages, and they're like, oh, this is what I learned from it. And they give me a reflection point, and that I learn from. So the more touch points I have, the more information I have, the more precise, consolidated my thinking becomes. And it helps me in so many aspects of my own life, but just being really true to what it is I am, what I feel, and the help that I've received over my life from hundreds of people.
About adding value to everyone's life that are looking for it as well.
I sat next to a gentleman and we were talking about how people are built in characters, and he said he's a people pleaser. And it's not that I am a people pleaser. I love seeing people enjoy themselves. I love seeing people figure themselves out. So maybe not people pleasing in the traditional sense, but I do enjoy that. And I said, there's some parts of me that are starting to really protect my energy and realizing who to give it to. And he gave me a really profound piece of advice. He said, just be careful, because if that's the way you built and you stop pleasing people, and that's everything that you have. He spoke about heart wealth. He said there is such a thing as physical wealth, right? But he says there's also such a thing deep inside that sits as heart wealth, that how you feel, and that sometimes is worth more than physical wealth. And if you kill your heart wealth because you're not doing what you enjoy, and if you enjoy helping people, making people better, maybe pick your battles from those that really drain energy, that aren't ready to help themselves, versus just fully backing away. And that's it with Dad this whole week of, I have heart wealth that I also need to consider in maybe a form of filling your cup. But that's Dad's, that's who I am, that's my nature. I enjoy seeing people peaceful, content, happy, striving towards something, versus sometimes I see people quite often stuck in their heads, stuck in a place. And it's not by choice, could be the environment, but just being able to help them makes me so happy and peaceful.
On that topic, like related, you say when people, they sit in their kind of agony, or, they're not happy, they're stagnant and stuck. Do you feel that a lot of people choose to live their life because, I know you say environments, but I also think you can choose your environments. I mean, I've seen it with you've seen it with me, that our environment is constantly changing in a social aspect and where you put yourself. Do you think some people, it's a genuine struggle to get out of it, or they're choosing to rather enjoy having that feeling because they're so familiar with it?
I think it's a mixture of both. You and I spoke about being lost. The course covers some of that, but people feel uncomfortable when they get lost. They're trying to walk a new way forward, but there's no path. There's no map. There's no guide. So you're trying to break free and let go of a whole bunch of things. And in that journey, humans generally like stability. They like a form of knowing. So instead of carrying on being lost and knowing, let's take direction as an example. People always, when you say direction, people think it's absolute. But let's say direction is 180 degrees wide, and anything beyond that 180 degrees is going backwards. But even if the direction is not straight, and the direction you take a step forward, and it dots, but it's anything forward past that 180 degrees, it's still moving forward. Most people don't understand direction doesn't need to be absolute. It just needs to be a little bit better anywhere in that 180 degree forward. And it can take the long way to go there. It's not absolute. And I think maybe it's because of the way schooling systems work, that you have to have a pass mark. You have to have this. It's the way we're conditioned versus going, I just got to get through anywhere but backwards. Yeah, but backwards is comfortable. It's what they know. But it's so multifaceted because some people have no choice. It's the only environment they know. There's nobody there that they can look forward to, look up to, drive towards, or an environment that is long enough to change them. So it's not always just their fault. If there's some form of self-awareness, or they really want to, I suppose they could go and start researching it. Why am I stuck? Why am I feeling like this? And linger in it and push past those boundaries. But sometimes it's not people's fault. They just in that space. And even when they do get exposed to it, they get exposed to it for maybe an hour. We spoke about it just the other day. You see some of the people around you and they get to experience you for an hour and they're inspired by it. But that hour is so short for them in the space of a week. Then they go straight back to that environment that is not conducive to them being better. And then we look at it and we project and going, but if I can, you can. It's not that. The exposure to that change is so limited. Deep down inside, hopefully across their path, they come to a realization. And that's why we put things out like that. You're also a people pleaser, and we lean in and we try. But it's a deep, willing, knowing. So I think it's a balance between them being stuck in it and not having the environment to help them through it. And then maybe not pushing past that being lost when they do try, of being lost enough, long enough. There's no map, there's no guide. Just don't go back.
Brilliant.
I don't know if that summarizes it well enough, but it's how Dad sort of sees it. And when I see people in that space, you speak to them, you resonate with them, and I just try and make them aware that life doesn't have to be like this. And if that's the thought I leave them with, then they say, oh, life doesn't have to be like this. And it leaves enough introspection for them to go, what can life be like? Because I can't be there for the other 7 days or the 30 days. It just leaves them with a thought of, what could life be like?
It's up to them to do what they want with that thought. Because you speak about the 5 stages of change, which is the unaware phase of where people aren't aware of their change, like that they need change, of the benefits for the change, or that there's negatives to what they're not changing. And then there comes that pre-contemplation where they're thinking, oh, now this is something serious, it's affecting me in this way. And then contemplation comes where they start planning their things into preparation. And I think you saw it last year. I prepared a lot. I think I got stuck in that phase of constantly trying to learn to be better, but then I missed out on the action phase of where now this is where you put it in. I think I put it in for probably only 3 months and faded, because then my maintenance phase wasn't good of maintaining, even though I don't want to. And when you say going backwards, that's the relapse phase, that hidden 6th stage of it. I relapsed so quickly because it was familiar, it was comfortable. I knew everything that was going to happen if I continued with my choice of, let me go out. I know, Sunday I'm just going to relax, because that's what I did previously before, instead of using my Sunday to be more productive or get ready for the week, or just something that adds value to my life, rather than just sitting and sulking and sitting in this bad mood because I made bad decisions before. But that's what was familiar and what you groomed for in that social aspect coming out of school into uni. I think you are correct about the backwards.
And how many times have you tried?
Yeah, I think
we've all tried.
Yeah, multiple.
And that's the important part for that. But how many times have you tried?
I think,
don't put a number to it. Just
just a few.
And each time, does it get a little?
Gets a little easier the more and more. It sucks when you fail, well, not fail, just you don't accomplish what you set out to do, but then you go at it again and you go at it again, and then it starts becoming, hey, this is manageable. You can see the next grasp, the next step, and you just kind of follow that footstep forward.
We were having a laugh the other day. I think you referred to a friend of yours where you were saying, I'm lost. You're going to go through this. It's normal. Even my dad is lost. I know people in their 40s and their 50s are lost. And I think realizing that almost nobody in life has it figured out was quite a big thing for you. And we laughed about it because you said, Dad, sometimes I get lost. And we said, just don't go back. And direction is not absolute. And you referred to, I can't remember the exact story of how you told it, but just...
Well, it was just my friend told me this is the first time that they felt lost in their life, because the past few years it's been that, everything's set out for you. You have your high school, you know what you have to do. You go to uni, you know what you have to do. And once you're out of that particular era of your life, now it's you and your choices. I need to get a job. I need to do this. Some people the degree that they did doesn't align with what they want to do now. But, I take it in terms as to find yourself, you got to get lost. You can't find yourself straight off the bat. You have to go through this period and this phase of where you don't know what you want to do. You don't know where you are. You don't know who you are. I think a lot of people rush that process. Like they say, they focus on the destination, but it's the journey. I think a lot of people want that, I'm going to be, example, an accountant, this, that. But maybe you don't end up going that route. Then you feel uncertainty, you feel lost. But it's just redirection. It doesn't mean anything bad. It's just changing the course of your path.
You've seen Dad lost a few times, trying to figure his way forward, just not going back. I've seen you lost a few times. Was Dad ever absolute that you have to do this? What do I always say? Grandpa lived his life and he led by example, and he didn't really instruct me what to do. And I took a lot from that. So him leading and then me following, how has that been with, I'm hoping that I wasn't that absolute of telling you, be exactly like this, but give you the ability to think and the ability to be autonomous, just with guidance. And we've had our moments.
Of course, everyone has their moments, I think, as well. So I think our moments have been good, learn from them, progress. But in the terms of that, I don't think I was ever pressured the way people pressure other people. I think it's always been, you always saw, maybe I might not have had the marks, but you never made sure that's the one thing that you have to be good at. You could see that. We went straight to the comments over the marks at school. Uni, you didn't tell me that I should or shouldn't study this or do that. You didn't choose for me which university I should go to. Even now, with life, you're not telling me this is where you have to go push here. And I think it gives a sense of true freedom and true independence, where I don't feel like every choice is made for me. I know my choices are my own, which I think people don't realize. They're always going with, that's the step I have to follow, but you're following the wrong steps. You should be following the guidance. You shouldn't be following that path, because not everyone's path is the same, but the guidance can help you shape to your path. It might be from a different path, but it could push you onto your path. So I think it's true freedom and true choice that I've learned from following you and seeing how you do, because you've never been one to force upon or be forced on upon.
And how many other people do you look up to that you're starting to see those positive qualities or the qualities that resonate with you?
There's definitely along the line, social circles change. The people, your network that you've introduced me to, my network that I built, it's definitely changing, and there is people that you look up to, but I've realized you can't get everything from one person. Like you said, you might have an anchor or a pillar in one person, but it won't ever be to one. Not one person can fulfill you. So you do have those multiple outlets to look at for different things, different guidance. One could be that you could speak about helping with my career or my emotional side, but what happens if I need to go to someone else for something more, my physical side? Or not everyone can give you that. Not one person can give you that. And I think it's really important to surround yourself with people that can tick those different boxes.
And you're starting to really build that at a very young age. I think Dad was probably only in his 30s, early 40s, where I really started understanding and using that as a strength.
Well, I think I'm also really grateful because, since a young age, also being an only child, I always had to entertain myself. But then you would take me, to like some of your friends' dinners and stuff, and I would have to socialize with older people, which I think is really benefited me now. Younger me might have hated it because
I remember those moments.
There's no one my age, head on the table, upset, and you get, your one friend that really interests me, and then they speak about like something that intrigues you as a kid. But now the more I grow, I realize I can speak to people older than me. I can speak to people younger than me. I can connect on different bases, where I feel like some people are kind of just stuck that this is my age group, this is what I'm limiting myself to. But really, that saying of don't ask for directions if the people don't know where you're going or haven't been where you're trying to go. Why am I asking someone my age for advice for something someone else older than me has been there or is trying to go there? They've lived that part of the life I'm trying to get through. But now why reach out for advice to someone that's on the same terms as me? You know, we're both figuring out life. This person's got what we want to get to. But I think people confuse that. They rather take their friends' opinions and advice over mentors. And
so if you had to give your friends a tip of how uncomfortable it is to sit with people outside of your circle, but for the benefit, how would you phrase that?
I'd say it's a small sacrifice to pay for something big. I think not even a sacrifice. I think it becomes more important than you realize. I think people are just so worried of how they're perceived of changing their lifestyle. You know, I think a lot of people stick with their social groups mainly because it is fun, because, you know, you let go of the world around you for a little bit. But sometimes things are serious. To learn, you got to reach out and beyond your limitation of just that group. You know, you got to move away, and soon people will join, you know. So I definitely think people need to put themselves out more to networking with people that have been where you want to go or are trying also to go where you go. I don't think there's any point staying with people that don't have the same vision as you do or don't have the same plan.
Yeah, whenever dad walks into somebody that's interesting, intriguing, different, I actually just ask them, I say, can I buy you lunch? And I ask them just to tell me their life story. People are always surprised. Like, you want to know about me? What is there? I'm like, there's elements of you, there's characters, there's traits, there's, you know, even if I can see somebody's gone through a lot of pain to get through things, they hide it. And I just want to know their life story. And that's the easiest way I've found to tell somebody, hey, let me buy you lunch or a cup of coffee and just tell me about your life, how you grew up, and let them tell that story. And that's how I learn. I build a connection with them. But I'm genuinely interested. Even if it's not something I'm sure I'm interested on, I just know that there's so much knowledge, experience, love, pain in that human that I want to get to know and put in my, I always refer to it as arsenal, like different ways I can think about things and different perspectives and how people have lived life.
And to me, that comes off as your intentions are correct. You know, I think a lot of people forget that it also starts with your intentions. What is your true intention of asking that person, hi, can I buy you lunch? Can I hear about your story? Is it not in a bad way to get value out of someone, but I'm talking value of learn. I think some people might have the wrong intentions when they come to that, thinking that they will give them the blueprint, the plan, you know, but you've started off right already. Your intention is you have a plan. This person has something that you could learn that adds to your plan, not that you could be a part of their plan. So I think intent is very strong from the story you've said.
And then quite often what happens in those sessions is it ends up being joint mentoring, because as I ask questions or they start talking, they always ask back and they ask, how do I think about this? And in their life, this is what they got through. How would I have dealt with it? It always lands up there. You know, and you build a really strong connection. So the value lands up being both ways. And every now and then I meet a person that is just so far ahead of that on certain levels that I can't add value and I can see where they're going. And that it was just that lunch then or that coffee. But the next time I see them, they're polite, they're kind, we have something we've shared in common. So I never see it as a waste. And I don't think most of them actually don't see it as a waste. We have an understanding that we're both trying to move forward. They might just be more focused on theirs at that point in time, but it always comes back. You know, sometimes you make a really good acquaintance, because I think there's a big difference between acquaintance and friends. And sometimes it forms a really good friendship. I love you, boy.
Love you too.
A few moments ago, you asked me around the social media side and putting this together, putting myself out there. And even us doing this podcast, it's only the second ever podcast. But I'll take it and I'll post it purely to look back, one, how far we've progressed. But these are special moments. It's the starting of something. It's not perfect. It's not ideal. But I want to look back at this in a few years' time and going, wow, look at where we started. I got to sit with my son. Things that are also important to me, important to other people. When other guests start coming on the show, that they get to look at that and going, you know, it wasn't perfect, but you guys done it. Or people got value from it. So sometimes I'll even post things or use things that are actually only for me. If it resonates with somebody else, that's great. But when I go back through the most effective life of most effective, I want to look at those moments that I enjoyed, not just the outcomes. I really want to introspect and going, geez, I sat with my son and we done this and it was challenging, or we got through that, or we had to build this. I want those memories. because as much as the human brain can hold things, there's certain memories that just a photo or a video brings back, and it brings either joy or to some people tears. But I'd prefer to fill my feed with some of my memories that really made me happy and proud moments, things like sitting with my son.
That's a great example, because I think someone watching that could also get a big inspiration and be like, wow, for example, if I watch a movie and, there's problems like the dad cries to the child, like the child loses, I always message you. I'm like, I love you so much. I think it's something of that aspect I think could give anyone's age group. I mean, someone from my age to your age that has a father or son, and then they,
I have that with grandpa.
Yeah. I think it's a normal human being thing to experience, and it is pretty cool.
Wow, and now I get to put it out digitally and I get to remember it forever. And when you have kids one day, or some of our friends, it's there.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. I can't stop smiling. Enjoying this a lot.
What was the thing you wanted to ask?
So I wanted to ask advice on a particular thing that I'd love to grasp the understanding of. Okay, I grasp the understanding of it, but practicing it. The circle of control, your thoughts and your advice on how to deal with that, of things out and in of your control, and as well what you can influence in the middle. As much as I can understand what isn't in my control, what I may influence and what is in my control, practicing that is a lot harder. And I've seen you do it. I mean, your first lesson to me, not first lesson, but of controlling your behavior and your reaction of when you broke my door, or not broke my door, you slammed open my door because I locked it and closed it and I was in a bad mood, and you showed me that, this is how you can react, and you can show that you choose to react a certain way. But to grasp it now and practice it is, obviously people are flooded by emotions. How do you handle that?
I actually remember that moment clearly, because Dad never really loses his temper, but I purposefully showed you that I could react. I have a choice in that, and I think you were quite terrified. You're probably like 10 or 11 years old and you've never seen that. But when it comes to that locus of control, the best way I can describe it is, if it's not going to matter in 5 years, why give it more than 5 minutes? So I'll let certain things sit with me, whatever the problem is. And I'm saying, is this important in 5 years' time? That's probably Dad's default. Small argument, something you could be obsessing about, even if it's a piece of clothing, or how you look, or what you're doing. Is this actually important in 5 years' time? Because if I look back, there were a lot of things I probably gave too much time to that didn't matter in 5 years. So that's my first benchmark. If you look at how people worry about the problem, you can't fix the problem. And that came from Grandpa, actually. So, and it came so strongly from Grandpa because, we grew up poor, and Grandpa could worry a lot about what position we were in. But Grandpa worked 2 jobs to send me and Chilton to school. He focused on what he could control. And there's always going to be so many problems. And if you look at it, people are going to have problems with their bills, problems with their kids, problems with their schooling, problem with their bosses, problem with their business. There's always going to be a problem. And it's easy to get caught up in worrying about your problems versus going, what is it that I can actually control? So Dad always goes back to a piece of pen and paper, believe it or not. And I write down, what can I do if this is my problem? Right? If I can see that the problem is not important in 5 years' time, I let it go. Influences, I can influence Sabian. I have a stronger relationship. There's a lot more trust. And I can use that influence to try and get an outcome that I'm looking for. But it's very rare. As your network gets stronger, your relationship gets stronger, that influence sort of gets stronger, but it's still such a small portion. I can't, no matter how much I try to influence you to do something, you're going to make that decision anyway. You're going to go out. You're going to study something. You're going to move overseas. No matter what it is, it's purely influence. So I move influence almost to guidance, and let's joint journal, let's talk about it, let's share, so that it's more joint experience that you can reflect on. But the problem itself, in the course I give an example of a business that we're going to retrench a whole bunch of people, and all they were worried about was the retrenchment. What we've done is we went in and focused on what they could do within the business, and we saved a whole bunch of jobs in the business because we focused on the control aspect. And the influence that they had was going into their customers and seeing if they could reignite sales and drive certain products, procedures, buy a little bit more time, and they were able to control it. So it's not that it takes practice. You can use a set framework. That is this going to be important in 5 years' time? Sometimes we get sit in the mirror and I see it in you. You're worried about one hair being out of place. Dad worries about, well, I'm like, this is not important in 5 years' time. And then the next thing I always use is I look at substance and character over anything shallow. So I've taught myself to be more concerned on my character and the person that I am than anything material in general. Because that's what's important, is my substance and my character. And that I can control. I can control that reaction. I can control how I wake up, what I choose to do. But if I worry about, I don't want to say the superficial, but if I worry about life's problems and that becomes my main focus, and we teach it, whatever you practice,
that's what you become good at.
Right? So if I practice worrying about my problems, I'll be very good at worrying about my problems. If I practice what I can control, write them down, understand, give 3 options to solve a problem, that's what I focus on. So it's practicing, being aware that I'm either going to practice worrying about my problems, anxiety, stresses, or I'm going to practice what I can control. And then that simple framework, by writing them down, what can I do to fix this problem? Even if I start with 1 point, I'm like, okay, at least I got 1 thing to fix my problem. Sometimes I'll write 10, and then I'll be like, out of these 10, what 3 things can I do? And then you can write influence. Who do I know in the network can do this? Who do I know that is a friend that can help me along? That's some of the influence. But generally, I always become self-reliant first, and then look at influence second. I don't know if that helps you.
No, of course. I also like a part that ties to that is when you speak about there generally is no problems or issues. If you want to reiterate on that, because I love that whole section.
You try.
I could give it a try. I just think you do it so well. But I know.
And you know why Dad's making you try?
To see how much it's been with me from the course, how much I took in.
Because if you teach it, you get better at it.
Yeah, okay. So I know it in my terms as well as you can explain it. But I know generally in life there is no problems and issues. Because if you can solve that problem or issue, it's not going to be a problem or issue. And if the problem or issue is in your life, but you can let it go, it never was a problem or issue. So if a problem or issue is in your life, if you can solve that and you can put yourself to it, you can solve the whole problem. See, I can't word it the same way.
That's fine, but you understand it.
Yeah, I know the concept of it.
So if we go through it and it says there is never a problem or an issue. Because pick the outcome you want. What do you want from this problem or issue? If you can't change it, there is no problem. If you can change it, take the steps to fix the problem. Therefore, in both scenarios, there is no problem. You're either willing to do something about it or you're not. If you're not willing to, there's no problem. Let go of it. If you can, do what you can, you fix the problem.
That's great. I love that. I do love that.
Took that a long time to understand.
It's still, I think a lot of people are going to take time to understand it. He's still going through it and everyone thinks they have problems. Everyone do have problems. No disrespect to anyone's level, everything to each their own.
Dad has problems. You have problems.
Everyone has problems.
But we're working on it.
The world has problems.
As much as we were supposed to discuss the course and the podcast around how it helped you, the other day we were in the kitchen and you spoke around people that might not want to see their parents, and it was attitude and mindset and some of the things you started to realize at 22. I don't know if you can remember that conversation.
I do remember it.
And it was very moving for Dad.
It did come from someone had told me, or not told me, they had complained about having to see their parents because, at this age, kind of, not even this age, you're not rebellious or any sort, but you want to start moving your life. You kind of let your parents go in the past, and I'm guilty of it. University happens when you move there and it's, I got a phone call from dad or mom, or have a dinner with them where you want to be joining with your friends or doing something different with your life. But I started realizing that what a sad reality, because why wouldn't you want to spend that time with your family, the people that gave you everything, life number one, the life you live where you are now comes from their guidance, their help, they've shaped you into the character you are. Yes, you become independent and learn.
They've also tried their hardest.
Of course. But it really shocked me and really opened my eyes, thinking that we spend probably 80% of our lives with family when we're younger because we're under their roof, they feed you, spend dinners at the table, lunch out. You don't have that standard of you can have that freedom to go and do whatever you want. So then when I heard the person complain about it, I thought to myself, that shouldn't be the case. I should also want to set time for my family to be with them, because it's so limited. We're only on this earth and only have one life for how long, who knows? Anything can happen at any stage in life. And I mean, since gymming with grandpa as well, I've become so more grateful and practice the gratitude I have with him, from the walks to the gym session. Even if it isn't speaking necessarily, it's the presence that means a lot. And I'd kill to go do. I mean, we started doing more on weekends of going to go have a lunch out or going to go do this. Even this now, I take a lot of gratitude with it. Where I feel some people don't really notice that aspect of life. It's kind of, I have my own life now. Let me go forward.
And I think there was an element, I look at your life, we tried many times to connect, and it's not always perfect. But I think the thing is, I always tried to connect with you. I had to have the patience. I am the parent in stages of your development. And then as you grew older, you try and connect back into dad with things that dad may enjoy. Dad tries to connect back in with you. I think people forget that it's an effort. It's a choice, and there were many stages of your life that we couldn't connect on certain levels. And it didn't take away the responsibility dad had to look after you, bring you up. But there were moments definitely where the connection is not strong, and that's okay. Because as long as you focus on it, you will get that connection back with family in some space, and friends. It's not just, if you've got a very loyal, trusting, a person that's got your back friend, it can waver. It's not absolute.
Because I mean, something that I really had to learn myself as well. You start placing, and you've seen it as well, how I went through it and how I've got to separate. You start placing your social life a bit higher than your actual life, which I realize a lot of people do. I mean, social media is fake. You want to show this and that. Even when you go to, I see a lot in society that people are fake to one another. You can be a part of this big group, but as soon as you leave the table, they can talk behind your back, And I think a lot of people put focus on their social aspect of, let's go do this, let's go do that. And you feel happy when it's fun, but you forget about the people that are actually a part of your life, the people that you started life with, the ones that are paying for where you stay, all those responsibilities right now. And you let go of that a little bit, and then it becomes too little too late when you realize, oh wow, I need to give more time because something happened,
And to your point around people, and it's needed, right? Because some of that is fun when you're connecting in those circles. You say people talk behind your back, things happen. It's part of life. Their opinion is none of your concern. That you should never worry about what they say or their opinion. You learn as you get older to have a tighter group of friends. But even in that, there's always a perception. You and Dad had a very deep conversation, quite emotional the other day, where you got to hear Dad, how Dad saw life and what Dad had to go through. And I got to hear how you saw life and what you got to go through. And being able to share that, I think people sometimes just need to share how they feel about things, the journey they went through, because we always project, we always think life was this because this is how I experienced it. I could see that shift in you. It was a very deep, serious conversation when you realized how Dad's life was, and then Dad realized how your life was. And that connection, sometimes it's tough to talk to, it's awkward, it's uncomfortable because it's very vulnerable. But not that I'd say we'd put that out there, but I would encourage people to have those type of chats, to tell people how they feel.
Again, it all comes down to communication, I feel. Really in this world, it is all about communication, because I always pride myself on that, and then I realized I never once got to that stage with you to ask you about yours. It's always me as the child, But I think people also got to realize it's our parents' first time living as well. It's everyone's first time living. No one lives again. So where does it come where it's a two-way street? It shouldn't always be you asking my stories. I need to know your stories as well. And I think a lot of people don't focus on that aspect of life, of actually figuring out what they did to get where they are, what they did to become who they are, and hearing your side of the story compared to how I used to see it. It really changed my whole perspective, like you said, and it's kind of made me look at my past differently and currently now, Yeah,
it was a really a very heartfelt session that we had. Okay, let's move on to something more positive. Pick up something that you want to
positive.
Go on to.
One thing I loved, I really enjoyed doing this course online. I looked at it. It kind of got sad that it had to end, And also the progression of how the course went was so nice and linear, and I learned a lot from it. I'd encourage a lot of people to do it. The parts where I really did enjoy it as well, but also struggled with and want to know if it, from your point of view, if it changes often, is that brain profiling. First of all, your brain profile, do you feel like it constantly changes when you ever look back at it and see? Because from my experience, I see that I've always still been the emotional and creative in the brain profile.
So the brain profile was broken into four. You had your logical and analytical, you had your creative, your process, and your emotion. So dad's is, it's your preference, right? So dad's preference is generally creative and analytical. Through life, I had to learn the hard way, because they say creative people sometimes don't finish things. And through a logical person, sometimes you overanalyze. And in running businesses and doing things, you skip processes and you skip human emotion. And I was lucky enough to have a few great coaches and a few failures here and there that you realize the process becomes super important. You can't pressurize a system if the process is wrong. And if the process is well documented, you can actually move faster. Where in the traditional way Dad used to think was in the creative and analysis side, if the process, it feels so hard to do and you've got to follow something. But strong process allows you to move so much faster. And then as Dad evolved through businesses and more important roles and having more people, you realize that people are the foundation of everything. So although Dad stayed creative and analytical, strongly rated there, when I done the brain profile back then, my emotional side just expanded and the other two shrank for probably about a year or two, when I realized everything you want in life or you're going to do in life is with other people, and how they interact with you, how they remember you, what they're going to recall, and how they're going to think of you. And especially when you're leading larger teams, realizing that their life is so much more important than a particular job role. They've got a family, they've got responsibilities. And so my emotional side grew massively. I actually went on a couple of courses just to realign how I realigned with people over just business, and realizing what's actually more important is what they want to achieve, and then bringing in what we achieve together. And then that importance of process. And even now, it's so, I'm terrible at it. My process rating is a 0. Do I truly understand it? Did I put myself in the position to learn it, understand it, even though I don't enjoy it? Yes. Because really solid processes allow you to go super fast. But my general nature will always come back to creative, logical, analytical. But just through my experience and forcing myself into areas, I know the other two are so important. So I'm good at them, but they're not my preference. Why did you ask the question?
Just in terms of, looking at you, from my point of view, and I think from a lot of people's point of view, of you ticking most of the boxes, obviously, like you always say, you can carry things well. But I look at myself, sometimes I do struggle with the analytics. I think that's pretty much my weakest spot, is analytical thinking and logical thinking. I think I'm very based off emotions. I've always been a creative person. The process depends on what I need to do with the process. So I was just trying to see and ask and see from your perspective of doing the course, of how much you've changed or focused on those aspects in the profile, compared to like someone that's taking the course to someone that made the course.
One of the reasons I put it in is because people need to understand the importance of each one, and how do they work with it, and how do they relate to it. Not just in a work environment, especially in a personal environment, and a life environment, and a family, and a friend's environment, and a connecting environment. It's so important that they understand the importance of each. They don't have to be specialists at them, but just understand that some people are process orientated. Some people are emotional orientated. Some people are logical. Some people are creative. Just understanding and what the strengths and the weaknesses of those are helps you go so much further in life, in building relationships, building a life, being understanding of yourself, saying, I'm emotional person. So an emotion person can have these high highs and these super low lows, being aware of it, that you narrow the band, that it doesn't feel like a roller coaster. But if you're not aware that you're emotionally driven, a lot of emotional people go through these big ups and then the big downs and the big So it's saying I can still have the ups and downs. I'm a feeling person, but how do I narrow that band that life doesn't feel like a roller coaster, that I can pull myself out of the downs or when things are getting serious, and I can control those highs and not let it go too far. Just getting in control of it, especially if you're an emotional person. A process person might have to look at it and say, I can't always just narrow down, and it's not always about the process because humans interact on emotion, right? Most of the time it's still feel, although you might not be all that emotional, but I can't just focus on the process because it lacks being humane. And how do I narrow this? I want to be absolute process. Everything must be documented to, okay, there can be some give, and if the process is not perfect, I'm not falling apart, that they have some gray, that they know which processes are important and which aren't, when to apply a process.
It's about understanding yourself and then also helping to understand others, knowing exactly how they react or how they be, so you can manage and know how to have a conversation or connect with that person.
Or especially if you're working together or living together with that person, you know what's important to them or not. But the minute you know what's important to them, you kind of don't drop the ball in those areas. If you know what's not important to them, it's not saying that you get slack, but you don't have to focus on those things because it's just not important to that person.
And that's also, I think, would relate to, I'm assuming, not the same, but core values and beliefs and morals in a workspace or in relationships, family, friends, and in the workspace, especially in terms of what your core value is. If the people around you don't match those, it's just going to cause some shift in the dynamic and actually be worse than benefit, because if you align with core values, all your goals and purposes and your targets will align together because you're focused on the same thing and believe in the same thing.
It's really hard to exist if you don't know who you are and what your value is. Your core values, what's important to you. Honesty, ethics. It can be look, aesthetics. Some people do enjoy material things, and I'm not talking material things in a negative. They like clothing, they like designing, they like handbags, that's fine. You've got to know who you are, because you're going to bump into a lot of people that are going to tell you who they are and how you should be. So core value starts really at the foundation level that I see a lot of people miss, of going, this is who I am, this is what's important to me. When you understand that and you can message that out, and a person can sit in front of you and saying, what's important to me is respect, being timeous, honesty. These are the core values. I'm not going to list mine right now. And saying what's not core value to me is if you're not, you don't make supper every night. That's not important to me. And that gives that person that understanding of you and vice versa. And I know what Sabian holds dear. I can fulfill that. I understand that. And if it's not, I got to move on to somebody that does align with my core values, instead of trying to fit in with people that you don't even know who you are. And most of the time they don't even know who they are.
I feel like most people also cling their personality, imposter syndrome. They try and fit in, so they get a mix of who they actually are, because this group is one group, other group another, and they mix in between. And not that it's a chameleon effect, it's imposter syndrome. You don't know who you are because you're so drawn between how you have to be in front of here. But what I'm starting to realize, like with what you're saying, your core values, that's when you start attracting the people that share the same core values. If you're unapologetically yourself, and you don't have to fit in, you value yourself just as much as anyone else would. You know, you got to focus on yourself, and then you start attracting the people that are willing to figure it out with you or align your same morals and goals. I do think that's just a big influence in the world that happens, is people don't know who they are because everyone else is telling them who they should be, like you said. And I think it's getting worse and worse, at least from my point of view. Seeing it is just people are so adapted or attracted towards peer pressure. They put themselves in those situations and it happens, and then they complain when it does.
You know, and core value is also important to understand, is because you may want a partner, relationship, let's talk business partner, relationship, life partner. Your core values could be hard work, ethics, big picture thinking. Your partner's core values could be home, looking after a family, and that's important because those two core values come together. One looks after one thing, one looks after the other thing. So it's not just about attracting people similar to the core values, but to get forward in the world, we're always together. So what core values do I need that I'm not good at, or not that I'm not good at, it's not actually me, but together life is so much better. The business partner whose core values are absolute ethics, can't sleep at night because something's not done correctly within a process in a business that won't pay a salary. Those are great core values to have in those people, where mine would be driving revenue, focusing on new customer acquisitions, how to be strategic. So I partner with other people's core values that help me go forward, not just only looking for people that I can connect with.
That's a lot.
That's hard to understand, but
It's a lot, yeah. It makes sense slowly. I mean, because you haven't been to that level of my life to see those things working dynamic. But I do grasp the aspect of it, of how the teamwork would work, despite having different core values. But like you said, similar. They both drive towards the same goal, but it's different aspects towards that goal.
So one of my business partners, I don't know if you call it a core value or a pet peeve. It's being timeless, and that's in one particular business. My other business partner is all over the place. So for the one whose core value is timelessly, my thinking, and I gave the saying, was if I'm on time, I'm late. So whenever I go and I got to spend time in that environment with him, I'm always 5 minutes early. And the other person, I'll always phone, I'll actually check to go see, are you on time? Are you going to be there? Are you busy with something else? So I understand their core values, and I can slot into that because I understand them. Instead of me getting there, getting upset because this one is timeless and this one's all over the place, I need to be fluid. I need to be flexible because those are their strengths that in the places that I need them to perform and be a part of something that we're building.
So I wanted to ask you about one last thing before we get towards the end, sacrifices and how you view them, because I think a lot of people believe sacrifices add more negativity than benefits in their life.
I think generally sacrifice is deemed as a negative everywhere I've gone. Imagine, what would you use as a word that's positive or the opposite of a negative connotation to sacrifice? Imagine I use the word benefit. So if I wake up early and I go to the gym and I set my day and I get a routine, or I study at night, or I work on the weekend, most people would use the word sacrificing my time. Imagine using the word I'm benefiting my life. So when Dad looks at it, I don't look at it as I'm sacrificing this. I'm benefiting for that. Because just generally, I think human nature, the sacrifice means we're giving up, we're losing, we've got to give something up. So what I've done is I've learned to use the word benefit or positive connotations to things. So I don't sacrifice my sleep if I've got to wake up an hour or two early. I benefit from getting something accomplished. I benefit from putting time into the gym. So when people think they have to sacrifice things, I think they just need to reframe it, because if you're going to start off with a negative, sacrificial, I'm giving up, I think it's always going to be tougher. So my hack for that's always been, I'm benefiting from this. So even if I got to work on a weekend, you see me working till there's the study 1, 2 at night, I'm benefiting from. So yes, am I giving up some family time? Am I giving up certain things? But I'm benefiting from being able to look after my family, to grow my knowledge, to be more complete, to be a good husband, father, business partner. I'm benefiting from those things. You know, I suppose the borderline comes when it becomes super negative, is if you're sacrificing things that are true to you, who you are, and you really, let's use the word, losing out on life, on happiness. Then I would use the word sacrifice in a negative. You're sacrificing too much. But anything else that you're going to do, if you're moving forward, swap the word sacrifice for benefit.
That's important, because I do think that a lot of people aren't willing to shed their old selves to become the person that they want to be, you know, and they never want to make those, as you say, benefit, but in this term, they never want to make those sacrifices of losing out on missing that party. There's going to be another party, for example, or missing out on going to that event instead of, like you say, working. I think a lot of people aren't willing to put that sacrifice in because it's such a negative tone. So the beneficial outlook on it is amazing to hear in that perspective.
Yeah, and that's the way Dad's, from about my 20s, I started using that. So this is what I'm benefiting. So I'm not sacrificing a party with my mates, waking up feeling drunk the next day, knowing that alcohol creates maybe 2 days of depression post. I still go out and party. I still have great fun, and I'll have those Sundays where I've got a hangover, and Mondays I'm feeling ill, but I'm doing it consciously now. And those weekends that I give up, or the hours that I give up, or something I may be obsessing about, I understand it's the benefit of. And I'm always cautious of, if it goes too far, then it's a loss. Then it's I'm sacrificing too much of myself. That's when it's deemed negative. So in the word sacrifice, I want to ask you a question. Let's look at it as a benefit. You started with the course and it gets progressively deeper, life, business, career. As you do it and as you do it more, were you sacrificing time to learn? When I say that, maybe not partying, spending at home on a weekend, not watching a particular football game, or were you benefiting even though the course gets deeper and deeper?
100 times, yes, because throughout my day, I'd waste doom scrolling on TikTok or social media or watching something that doesn't add any value to my life. As soon as I could do the course digitally, I could see how it went from the start of personal growth into a deeper meaning of the serious aspects of life. And I mean serious of how the course applies to your family, your business, who you are as a person. It slowly has an arc that's linear of all the important aspects of you and your responsibilities and accountabilities, but it's teaching you how to handle those at the best version of yourself. So I think replacing it with all those negative habits I did have, it added true value to my life, and I look at life with a different perspective.
And how it gets deeper and deeper and deeper?
Of course.
Understand?
I think it gets more complex, but the way you put yourself and immerse yourself in the course, and with the exercises including, you can really get a good grasp and understanding. It may take time, but if you're willing to have that patience and willing to learn, the deepness doesn't become all deep. And you can take that with you through life, your experiences, and learn it and apply it.
Because the first half of, I suppose, it's maybe split into four. So you've got personal development, you then have life, you then have career, how money's made, and then you have a lot of business strategies. And that arc of things of how people tie it together, and then obviously learning to rest, not to quit. How have you found that going through it all the way through to the business aspect, and how have you started processing that?
It's quite a good transition, especially in my phase of life now, starting to go with an internship starting next week, or going to the stage of where I need to start doing something with my life career-wise and moving into that aspect. The personal growth is done. That's not done. You can always grow 1% better, but the movement and shift in between it comes at a perfect time, especially here. I think for any age group or any person, that shift, it's found really easily to go from understanding yourself, understanding others, and then goes into understanding what you need to do to be the best of yourself in all aspects of your life. Even though I haven't experienced that whole business aspect and the career aspect myself, it's definitely given me a blueprint to understand money, understand how to go into a work relationship, knowing how to handle employees or a manager or your environment in a workspace. At least I have that guide, and realizing that you can't make money. It's just an outcome of your input into the situation, into your methodologic model. For example, it's what you put in and what comes out. So it's definitely something that's a good blueprint and guide to keep with you for those aspects. And I'm ready to start that journey and use it towards my business and careers.
Nice, Brian. And do you think people enjoyed listening to us today?
I think people will love us. If they want a second podcast, they can let us know. If you would like a part 2 of this podcast of me and my dad, follow, let us know in the comments, and subscribe.